Bisa di-admit pesertanya ya semua.
Iya, Pak.
Untuk space untuk Pak Dekan ya, Pak.
10 ya, Pak Dekan sama
Nadia.
Pak John.
Bu Nadia sudah?
Sudah tak WA, sudah dibaca.
Oke, terima kasih. Mas Ayu.
A campus from the best city in Indonesia. A city with a long history of struggle and heroism. Welcome to Universitas Negeri Surabaya. Founded in 1964 as a teaching institute for education under the name IKIP Surabaya, to be an educational institution that carries the mandate as a university that produces educators, along with the development of educational needs in the vast globalization era. UNESA maintains the spirit by establishing itself as a center for education development, preservation of traditional arts, sports science, and inclusive services for people with disabilities. Growing to be a leading university, UNESA now manages 7 faculties, consisting of 73 undergraduate study programs and 23 postgraduate study programs. Faculty of Sports Sciences, Faculty of Languages and Arts, Faculty of Education Sciences, Faculty of Social Sciences and Law, Faculty of Economics, Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences, Faculty of Engineering, Postgraduate Programs, managing 2 fields of study, education-based and non-educational study programs. UNESA is committed to improving the quality of education, fostering scientific traditions in research, promoting the spirit of community service, collaborating with stakeholders, and performing excellent, transparent, and accountable services.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang di Universitas Negeri Surabaya. di usia ke-56 tahun ini, kami dengan bangganya mengajak Anda untuk lebih dekat dan mengenal tentang UNESA. Kami terus berkomitmen tidak hanya menyelenggarakan pendidikan terbaik bagi tenaga pendidik profesional masa depan, juga sangat berfokus untuk menciptakan lulusan yang berkarakter, tangguh, kreatif, inovatif, dan mampu berkolaborasi pada siapapun, berbudaya yang humanis dengan spesifikasi yang unggul dalam hal seni, olahraga, dan pendidikan disabilitas yang komprehensif.
Education is not only the key of our existence, but also the spirit of struggle of UNESA. Becoming one of the campuses that organize teacher professional education programs that produce professional educators, UNESA is committed to organizing various empowerment programs as a stimulus to develop faculty members and student, research development, and innovative products as the solutions to problems in the society. UNESA, House of Champions, a supportive ecosystem in producing competitive and well-qualified human resources with global perspective to compete on both national and international levels. Collaboration is the key to progress and becoming a globally competitive campus. UNESA collaborates with a number of international institutions in the field of industry, government, and educational institutions. Set the higher class with complete facilities as a space for developing students' interests, talents, and potential. UNESA also continues to develop facilities and infrastructure to support academic and non-academic activities. Futsal International Sports Arena, Container Students Dormitory, Sports Center, Language Center, Graha UNESA, Student Activity Center, Jogging Track, Equestrian Field, International Basketball Arena, Student Activity Units, Art Development, Character and Personality Building, Sports, outdoor activities.
UNESA, 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 UNESA,
UNESA,
UNESA, satu langkah di depan.
bukan hanya menunggu mimpi kan datang, bukan pula menyerah pada rahasia. Inilah saatnya tak lagi berpangku tangan. Unesa berkarya
UNESA satu langkah di depan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to International Webinar. We proudly present International Webinar Series 1, Simlab Technology in Education 5.0, held by the Primary Teacher Education Department, Faculty of Education, UNESA on Friday, August 20th, 2021. Before we proceed the program today, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to Excellency, the Dean of Education Faculty, UNESA, Dr. Muhammad Nur Salim, MSE, Excellency, the Head of Department, Primary Teacher Education, UNESA, Dr. Anbesmin Tohari, Excellency Professor John Fischetti, Pro Vice Chancellor of the College of Human and Social Futures, as the speaker from University of Newcastle, Excellency Professor Susan Leja, Head of School, Dean of Education, as the speaker from University of Newcastle, Excellency Dr. Natasha Rappa, as the speaker from Murdoch University, Excellency Neni Mariana PhD, as the Head of Laboratory of Primary Teacher Education, UNESA, and all the distinguished guests, all participants of International Webinar. Please introduce me. I'm Mulhaq Suhdi. It's being great honor for me to accompany you during the event. Welcome you everyone in this International Webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, for this few minutes, this meeting is going to provide you plenty of opportunities to discuss, share knowledge and insight about the Simlab Technology in Education 5.0. Honorable speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, as our opening ceremony, let's listen national anthem Indonesia Raya and then continued by Mars UNESA.
Indonesia tanah air, tanah tumpah darah.
we would like to request Honorable Head of Department of Primary Teacher Education, Faculty of Education Indonesia, now is represented by Ibu Neni Mariana, PhD, as Head of Laboratory, to give welcoming remarks. Ibu Neni is pleased.
Thank you very much, Pak Ulhak. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, as the head of laboratory, on the behalf of the head of our department, Bapak Dr. Andes Mintohari, MPD, I would like to welcome all of you to this international webinar. Thank you for being here with us today. Before we get started, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the great people here. Excellency Director of Universitas Negeri Surabaya, Professor Dr. Nur Hasan MKes, Excellency the Head of Elementary Teacher Education Department, Universitas Negeri Surabaya, Dr. Andes Mintohari, MPD, Excellency the Dean of Faculty of Education, Bapak Dr. Andes Muhammad Nur Salim, MSI, Excellency Professor Susan Leger as the speaker and the Dean and Head of School of Education, College of Human and Social Futures at the University of Newcastle, Australia. Excellency Dr. Natasha Rappa as the speaker, a lecturer and a researcher at Murdoch University, Australia. Excellency Professor John Fischetti as the speaker and a Pro-Vice Chancellor, College of Human and Social Futures at the University of Newcastle, Australia. Honorable Mr. Ulhak Zudi, SPD MPD, as the secretary of our department. My best team, all the committee members and webinar operators. And of course, Excellency, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as our audience today. Our department, Elementary Teacher Education, has a new program named Webinar Series, both national and international. We already organized 2 national webinars, and today is our first international webinar. We consistently arrange it every week, and I hope there will be more people, educators, practitioners involved in our webinar. Well, today's webinar is a result of our collaboration with Murdoch University and the University of Newcastle, Australia, in order to implement Simlab Technology in our department. As we all know that we are now living in Society 5.0, this means that we are encouraged to utilize technology for solving a complex problem using critical thinking and also creativity. And that is what we try to do in our Simlab Technology. Research about Simlab Technology or Microteaching 2.0 has been conducted in America and Australia. This is the first time conducted in Indonesia, and our department obtains this great opportunity by doing collaborative research with Simlab researchers from Murdoch University and the University of Newcastle. The research has been funded by Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Surabaya. As one of the departments in Faculty of Education, UNESA, we produce prospective elementary teachers. We also have bilingual classes which prepare prospective elementary teachers who are ready to teach abroad or in international schools. Therefore, Simlab Technology implementation in our department enrich their experiences and makes them gaining more knowledge and teaching skills to teach students who have totally different cultures. Simlab provides the variety of classroom conditions and avatar students challenge the teachers in their learning engagements, and this implementation of Simlab Technology 5.0 through microteaching could be one of the best ways to provide best practice for our university students. Therefore, I hope we have now like 1,000 participants, both from within the country and from abroad, could give their best attention and utilize this opportunity to learn from all the speakers today. We are also welcoming you to interact, socialize, and making a connection with our speakers and also with the audience itself. Moreover, I hope this webinar can provide useful things for participants and committees. Also, it could strengthen the good relationship between our majors and institutions at the international level. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the limitation of time and before I hand over it to Mr. Ulhak, our today's MC, welcome both of you, the ones in our Zoom meeting room and also the participants in our YouTube channel. Welcome and enjoy our webinar. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Ibu Neni, for warm welcoming remarks. Thank you. Now, I would like to request Honorable Bapak Dr. Muhammad Nur Salim, as the Dean of the Faculty of Education, to deliver opening remark and officially open international webinar. Bapak Nur Salim is pleased.
Terima kasih Pak Prof. Ulhak.
Amin.
Thank you very much, Master Ulhak. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I go through the opening speech, please allow me to express my gratitude to Excellency, to the Rector of UNESA, Prof. Dr. Nur Hasan MKes, Cak Hasan, Excellency, the Head of Elementary Teacher Education Department, UNESA, DRS Minto Hari MPD, Excellency Prof. Susan Ledger. Selamat datang Prof. Susan Ledger. Selamat datang di VIP UNESA. As the speaker and the Dean and Head of School of Education College of Human and Social Future at the University of Newcastle, Australia. Excellency Dr. Natasha Rappa as the speaker, a lecturer and researcher at Murdoch University, Australia. Excellency Prof. John Fischetti as the speaker, and the Vice Chancellor, College of Human and Social Future at the University of Newcastle, Australia. Honorable Mr. Ulhak Yudi, SPD MPD, as the host and the lecturer of the Elementary Teacher Education Department, UNESA. And of course, Excellency, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as our audience today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's great privilege for me to be here and welcome each and every one of you to this international webinar on behalf of the university. Let me begin by giving you a warm welcome to the Simlab Technology in Education 5.0 webinar. In today's webinar, we would learn how the teacher with their complex problem would utilize technology as pathway. We know that education is not simple thing. We are dealing with human which has several needs, and these needs will vary from one or another. A situation like this could be challenge for teacher, and so teacher needs proper strategy to be implements in their classroom. Undeniably, the teacher is key and hot pivotal role in ensuring the learning engines could running well and all students needs fulfilled. As we live in society 5.0 era, which everything is technology based, and the professional teacher have to be adjust to the current situation. The teacher can reform the learning engines to be technology based, and the Simlab Technology 5.0 through micro teaching can be one of the best solutions for teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, before I give opening remark, please allow me to inform you that this webinar is organized by the Primary Teacher Education Department and is also a result of bilateral collaboration between UNESA and the Newcastle University and Murdoch University. This webinar has gathered around 1,000 participants both from within the country and from abroad. I hope this webinar can provide an opportunity not only for the participant, but also for speaker to share its other experience and expertise. I would also like to thank our three outstanding speakers, Mr. Susan Ledger, Mrs. Susan Ledger, Mrs. Natasha, and Mr. Jones, who will deliver new insight to all of us. And for all of the distinguished audience, welcome to our webinar. Hopefully, you can utilize this opportunity by gathering knowledge as much as possible. Due to the limitation of time and before I hand over it to Mr. Ulap, our student MC, on behalf of University Negeri Surabaya, I am officially open this international webinar entitled Simlab Technology in Education 5.0. Welcome and enjoy webinar. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Bapak Dr. Muhammad Nur Salim, for welcoming speech and official opening. Now, we're going to pray. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bow our head for a moment. Pray to God, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, so that our international webinar can be precious to all of us. I will lead this prayer based on the teaching of Islam, and those who are not Muslims, we are pleased to pray according to each of your beliefs. Oh Allah, today, in this beautiful day, through Zoom meeting, bring about international webinar on education. Make international webinar as useful science assembly as a medium of sharing useful ideas, knowledge, and experiences of scholars, researchers, teachers, and students of various disciplines, especially for teacher candidate. May international webinar we organize today benefit to our lives, broaden our knowledge, shine our ideas, and lead us to be successful, productive persons, which in turn will boost dignity in our nations. O Allah, Guide and bless our heart and our minds with the lights of your guidance. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities. Help us to speak our minds clearly. Help us to listen to each other, respect each other, love each other, so that we are included to the blessed persons. Protect us from unintended temptation, show us the right path, and give us knowledge and strength to perform good things equally, show us and make it clear the bad things, and give us knowledge and strength to avoid them. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Now, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's now our deep pleasure of main session, that is presentations. These presentations will be led by Ibu Neni Mariana PhD as our moderator. Now, Ibu Neni.
Yes, Pak Ulhak, thank you. So, okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everybody. So today I'm gonna be the moderator of this webinar, and also I'll be in partner with Mr. Ulhak Zuhdi actually, in a case
Yes. In case there's
I lost my connection. All right, so let me share slideshow.
Ibu Neni, please permit me, I turn off my camera.
Sure, Pak Ulhak. All right, let me introduce our first keynote speaker. Very beautiful lady here, Professor Susan Ledger. Okay, let me reading the curriculum vitae of Professor Susan Ledger. So sorry. Professor Susan Ledger is the Dean and Head of School of Education in College of Human and Social Futures, University of Newcastle, Australia. So this is the appointments that she has done so far. So previously, before moving to University of Newcastle, she had been in Murdoch University, and I met her there as my co-supervisor. And so this is the work that she has done so far. Simulation, introduced simulation to IT in Australia, doing internship, rural education, and international education, as well as the contributor to the Journal of International Research in International Education, and International Schools Journal, and International School Medicine. Oh, sorry for that. I apologize, my babies. Okay, and she has a lot of publications and also awards. Move quickly to the awards. Oh, so many, right? So this is the awards that the latest one is in 2020. She got Women in Research at Murdoch University. And previously, she has also like a lot of awards from many institutions. All right. Without further ado, I would like to say, Professor Susan Ledger, the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much, Nini, and it's lovely to hear your little one in the background. It just reminds people about the reality of living with COVID and living at home and working from home. Okay. Just going to share this with you. Tapis book. Okay, selamat pagi semuanya. Nama saya Ibu Sue Ledger dan saya berasal dari Australia Barat. Tetapi sekarang saya tinggal di Australia Timur di kota Newcastle. Sudah lama sejak saya tinggal di Indonesia. 20 tahun yang lalu saya belajar di IKIP Malang selama 1 tahun. 10 tahun yang lalu saya tinggal di Irian Jaya selama 5 tahun sebab saya guru di sana di sekolah internasional. Pengalaman saya di Indonesia istimewa, dan saya rindu semua teman dan tempatnya di sana, and I can't wait to get back there. Saya senang sekali atas berbicara hari ini dan harap Anda menikmatinya. Hari ini pidato saya dalam 3 bagian. Yang pertama tentang University Newcastle sedikit. Yang kedua tentang simulasi, dan yang ketiga tentang simulasi dan masa depan. Saya mau minta maaf ya atas bahasa saya, itu tidak lancar atau benar, maaf. Dan oleh sebab itu, saya akan melanjutkan pidato dalam bahasa English. Terima kasih. Yang pertama, I want to acknowledge the Awabako people who are the traditional custodians of the land that I'm presenting on here in Newcastle. I want to acknowledge their elders past and present and into the future. I also want to acknowledge and extend my acknowledgement to the homelands of all the people who are joining us via YouTube or Zoom. And I want to particularly honour and acknowledge those who are from Surabaya, and particularly those who are current elders and distinguished guests here in Surabaya. I said briefly before that this talk will be in 3 parts. I'm going to give a brief outline of Newcastle. I'm going to talk about simulation, and then looking at simulation and beyond, what's next with Technology 5.0. Really proud to be at Newcastle. It has some very underlying beliefs of equity, diversity and excellence that certainly form my foundations. It's a very well recognised university. It's in the top 200. There's 37,000 students across 113 nations. We've got 148 global alumni, and they're scattered everywhere. Many of them are from Indonesia, and I want to welcome all of those who are here. We're a top regional university, and a bit like Surabaya, we're not the capital, but we are providing support for our local communities, and that's what I love about Newcastle. We have 180 partnerships, of which Surabaya is our latest, and I'm looking forward to strengthening that. And we actually are number 1 in university in Australia for Indigenous enrolments, and I'm very proud of that. University of Newcastle has a few locations. We have 3 campuses here in New South Wales, Callaghan, which is where I'm presenting today on Wabakal country and land, and we have Central Coast and Sydney. We also have presence in Singapore, and that's developing as we speak. Really proud of the School of Education because through the identification and employment of high quality research and educators, our School of Education is becoming Australia's leading school of education for equity, excellence and technologies. And we're using all of those in the preparation of teachers and leading scholars to prepare our students for the diverse student population and also the diverse contexts in which those students are located. We're addressing critical issues facing education and we do that by partnering with other educational research of global significance and impact, particularly those linked with the UN Sustainability Development Goals, of which we've recently become very highly regarded. And lastly, we're defining ourselves as the national leaders in understanding Indigenous cultures of learning and producing the next generation of Indigenous teachers, scholars and leaders. Our students really love our offerings that we have here. We're ranked 2 in student satisfaction, particularly with our postgraduates. We also have a great employment rate. 96% of our students actually get employed, which is a really good percentage. And we're in the top 100 in the world of education. Like you, we offer a range of different degrees, our undergraduate degrees, primarily early childhood primary, and we also have Bachelor of Education secondary studies and Bachelor of Education primary studies for international students. Our postgraduate degrees are sort of aligned with our specialisations. We have graduate certificates in a range of our specialisations and in expertise areas, which I'll show on the next slide. A Master of Education. We also lead up to Master of Philosophy and PhD, Master of Leadership and Management, Special Inclusive Ed, Teaching, and any of the specialisations within teaching, primary and secondary. The areas of expertise, and this is one of the reasons what drew me to Newcastle, is that we have such a wide range of expertise, researchers and teachers in these areas. Quality teaching model and rounds, fantastic, very well known internationally. I've put the people's names up here if you want to Google them and try to make connections with them if it's a field that you're interested in. I noticed that Surabaya has a lot of special inclusive education and disability work. We have a very, very strong group in that. So if you're in physical activity as well, I saw a strong physical activity group. We're in ERA 5 in that area. Strong early childhood, strong education, leadership and management, simulation-led technologies, strong and getting stronger. We have a great group of people in there. Our studies of research, training and impact, and that's been a long-standing group, as has history and our global research and teaching. I'm very proud to be here because this School of Education has leaders in the field, not just in the state, but nationally and internationally. And partnering with Surabaya means we can have two-way learning between both of us. So moving on to simulation and in education, this is one of the designs from one of our Indigenous students here at Newcastle, and I just love it. So I've used it to separate each of my sections of talk today. So why did I do simulation education? I've always wanted, and I'm always looking at better ways of preparing my teachers, or our teachers and our future teachers. Probably about a decade ago, I heard about the work that the University of Central Florida was doing with Lisa Dyker and her team. And I reached out to them probably about 5-6 years ago. What they did, they set up Teach Live, and that's still continuing. It's a very strong research centre with Teach Live. Then Mersion was a company that was a startup company to move it into sort of more of a software approach, and it's more of a commercial arm of what Teach Live was. And they've now what we've sort of invested in with the site license, but we remain connected to Central Florida. Murdoch University in 2017 was the first university in Australia to bring this technology into Australia. The Americas have probably got about 30 universities or more now that are actually using this technology. It's becoming more standardized and used and mainstream, which is great. And I'd love that to happen here in Australia. And now I'm proud of Surabaya for actually being the leaders in Indonesia to maybe take it forward in Indonesia. University of Newcastle has been working with Murdoch for a long time, and we've now got publications and really strong fields of research that we're working on together as a collective with Murdoch, but also with University of Central Florida and other universities that are interested in it. The reason why I looked at it and I saw it as much benefit for me as being an educator for my whole life, and I'm a passionate teacher and I'm a passionate advocate for the teaching profession, is that I think it actually provides us with a diagnostic tool that allows our students to be better prepared for before they go on placement. So there's been a whole heap of research, and I'll give you the list of research papers at the end, that say that if you use this technology in the same way that other professions have been using this technology for a long time to hone their skills, to practice before they place, to develop confidence and self-efficacy by just being able to practice it, to be diagnostic and reflective, because as a future teacher, you have to be diagnostic. You need to know what the students can do so you can build on it. You need to know how you're going as a teacher and how you're connecting with students. The focus becomes more on the learning. It is also, as Surabaya is doing, it teaches you different language skills. Not only are you doing rehearsed languages, but you're learning how to do the impromptu language that happens in a classroom that you can't prepare for. So you're responding to conversations and questions on the go and on the run, and that's the best form of language learning. What it also does is gives you controlled scenarios. Whatever interaction or whatever job, and the teacher's job is becoming even more complex these days. Whatever the teacher's job is, you can actually replicate it with simulation and just practice it. Okay, I'm going to give you, because I told you about immersion, I'm going to play this just so you get a brief overview of it. You don't have to listen to me.
Every child deserves to have an excellent education. The impact of today's teachers relies on their ability to reach and teach a diverse classroom of students. Immersion's immersive VR technology allows educators to practice navigating various challenges in a safe place, preparing them for classroom management and content-based instruction.
The use of the avatars, we get that question a lot, but what it does is it creates a sense of privacy and authenticity for the learner. So once they get over that initial discomfort of talking with an avatar, they really start to lean in and just become candid and authentic. It's the safest place to learn from a mistake. Immersion at its best is a practice opportunity.
Our technology is used by countless institutions to help teachers build confidence and competence, elevate the skills of administrators, and offer interactive learning opportunities to students. Immersion provides a unique space to experiment, learn from mistakes, and develop confidence. Powered by a blend of artificial intelligence and live human interaction, Immersion is a leading approach to VR simulation that unlocks empathic potential through immersive practice.
Okay, that explained it a little bit better than what I could have. Oops, sorry. Oops. Let's go. Now, so I've given you the bigger frame of simulation. This is what, when I talk about simulation within initial teacher education, this is a snapshot of what we do. We have an interactor on that left-hand side. That's the person behind the scenes acting as the avatars. Then we have the group, the classroom, and each of those characters are quite different. And we can tell them to be good students or naughty students, whatever behavior or whatever we're trying to teach our teacher education students, we can do that. Then the students, our student teachers actually have a hop into either a laboratory or a laptop and start their interactions. What we did and what we found out after the first couple of years that it needed a little bit more than that. So what we did is we added on a clinical practitioner who actually provided feedback, direct feedback straight away, and helped to provide feedback that really honed in on the skills that needed to be worked on and all the different components. So that's how it's evolved over the last few years at Murdoch and here at Newcastle. It also allows you, because it's online, we can have observers, and I know Nenny and her team were watching their classes as they were delivering, their students as they were delivering it. So you can actually, it's good for teacher educators as well as teachers who are going to become future teachers. How do we use it? Typically there's 4 different areas that we've been focusing on. One on entry, and I'll be talking about that today. Parent interviews and things, Natasha will talk about that, and micro teaching, John will talk about that. And Nenny, I'll put your surname instead of your name. And then language studies, I'm going to draw on some of the work that Surabaya have been doing as well. Okay, so there's some of the ways, the what that we do. When we talk about on-entry screening in Australia, we have to actually have some sort of screening or assessment before students come into initial teacher education. Now, some people will do, and I'll let this talk about it.
If you're a future teaching student, it is compulsory to undergo a pre-entry evaluation before you start your degree. While other unis might ask you to write an essay, conduct an interview or a personality test, Murdoch is the first university in Western Australia to screen future students in Simlab, our virtual classroom. Simlab is a fun and easy way to test your suitability as a teacher. The Simlab virtual classroom is a tool you will continue to use throughout your education degree at Murdoch. There are 2 ways for you to access your pre-entry Simlab screening. If you'd like to come in person, you can take your Simlab screening in a session on campus. We will set you up in our specialised Simlab, which is located at our South Street campus. Otherwise, you're welcome to take the screening online from anywhere that has internet access. For this option, it's best to find a quiet place to sit down for 5 minutes where you won't be interrupted. If you're accessing the screening online, you will be sent a video call link via email that will take you to the virtual classroom. To start your screening, you should introduce yourself, then begin engaging with the classroom, teaching the class about something of interest to you. Finish the class by summarising what you've talked about and ask if they have any questions. You'll be assessed on your language, improvisation, rapport building and confidence. Following your screening, you'll receive your results via email within 2 to 3 working days. The Simlab screening is free and sessions are booked online. Once you've secured a session, you'll receive an email confirmation with further information. Good luck.
Okay, so any student coming in, that was what we did at Murdoch. We're also now doing it at Newcastle. We've had the first lot of Master of Teach students come through. What I like about it is it gives me, or gives any of our future teachers, a diagnostic of all of the students coming in. Here's an example of it. So you'll get comment and rating on your language, your improvisation, your rapport building, your teaching self-efficacy, and then you'll get a rating. And then you'll be shot out some comments about, you know, what the focus areas is and what you need to do or enroll in if you do get in. It's a really good diagnostic tool. So I mentioned before that you can set up any scenario, and that's the good thing about the simulation is no matter what context that you need your students to practice, you can set up any scenario. And we get the interactors behind the scene to actually prepare those for you. Those interactions can be student to student. You saw that, you know, some of our little E's, and we've got some students in hospitals learning to just talk with a class of friends their age. So student to student. You can do teacher to student, and that's primarily what we're doing within our initial teacher education program. You can do teacher to teacher, so you can practice skills of collaboration or difficult conversations or conflict resolutions. You can also do teacher parent, and you'll hear about some of those with Natasha. You'll talk about principal and teacher and how principals can practice their skills of communication and talk about difficult situations, etc. Principal and student, we often don't get that opportunity to do that discussion, and principal and parent. So whatever scenario future teachers who have got such a complex job have, it can be replicated within technology. One of the things that Nenny mentioned earlier was the cultures of learning. When I first looked at adopting Teach Live and the American model, there are a few issues with that, with the language, the timing, etc. So that's when we decided that we would invest in this because it's actually such a good teaching tool. So for us, it's going to be diagnostic. It looks at teaching and learning. It actually addresses rehearsed questions, but also impromptu responses. Typically, when you're learning a second language or third language, people can practice, but it's those impromptu responses that will catch you out. And that's why these scenarios are really good. But all in all, no matter what scenario you choose, the ability to reflect on your practice by having a video of your 10-minute micro teaching session is going to help you in that fundamental planning, teaching, assessment cycle. So reflecting on your teaching. So cultures of learning, as you mentioned, Nenny, you know, with your students working with Australian interactors in Australian contexts was similar to what our sort of response was when we were working with American simulators in American contexts. So we ultimately ended up sort of developing our own interactors and setting up our own site license, which is what we're now using at Newcastle from Murdoch. So the cultures of learning, we can develop some great cultures of learning through simulation because we can practice literally anything. Here's your latest micro teaching one, and those comments that I just spoke about that Nenny talked about, you know, the languages. She said a lot of Indonesian teachers focus very much on the tools or the equipment or the whatever, rather than sometimes looking at the teaching and the learning that's taking place. So just by having a short pilot, Nenny and her team of primary educators and the group have realised where their focus is going to be. And that was what happened at Newcastle, and what happened at Murdoch is that it makes us look at what we're doing as teachers of future teachers. So our teacher educators are looking at their and reflecting on their practice. That can only be a good thing. So we're continually trying to improve our practice so that the teachers that we generate are reflective and ready for these new technological ages. And simulation allows that to happen. So we've talked about simulation, talked about Newcastle, talked about simulation, but I want to know what's next and the scope of this. When University of Central Florida first set this up, it's primarily for two reasons. One, to help teachers learn how to teach special needs students, and the other one was how to increase science and maths, better improve science and maths lessons. That was the original part, but now we can go beyond that, and technology is also changing. So our partnership with UNESA, Newcastle and Murdoch, and we've had a couple of these meetings, but with the researchers, is that we want to strengthen our simulation in ITE, particularly in Indonesia. We want to do some joint research and publications with that, and particularly some supervision. We're hoping to have visiting scholars both ways, in and out, once COVID pending and permitting. And then we need some exchange programs for students and staff. So we can really, when we make a partnership with someone, it's a bit like making a friend. We want to make sure that it's a two-way relationship and there's lots of opportunities. So for simulation, this is one of the plans that this year was going to be pilot simulation. We're going to do some research and webinars, and here we are. We're going to build that up in 2022. And then sort of by 2023, hopefully Surabaya will be in a position where they'll be able to sort of lead the way in Indonesia and find collaborations within Indonesia. So simulation is beyond in terms of collaborative beyonds. It's also what else we can do with, and if you look at these two platforms, one's the Teach Live platform in University of Central Florida, and one's the immersion one. We use both, and for different reasons. But it talks about the simulation specialists behind the scenes, the people who are behind the scenes who create these scenarios and who manage the avatars. That technologies for that is improving all the time. So it's going to watch that space. But it's also going to be, and there's more AI behind the scenes that will help with the scalability and reduce that cognitive load on the interactors. So and there's going to be some much more sort of analytical data that we can collect from our interactions within the simulated environment. So you could hone in and dissect and focus on all sorts of things. The number of ways, who talks to who in these classrooms? Are we privileging certain students? What language are we using? Eye tracking, Natasha and I've done an eye tracking paper about that. So you can actually look at these interactions from multiple perspectives, and that's when you bring in your collaborative research partners. So that's something beyond. What's also going to change is the immersive environment. At the moment, our students are immersed in the Simlab or just on a laptop. Newcastle has just invested in an immersive environment, and so we can actually step into an Indonesian classroom or step into an Indigenous community school. We haven't bought the big one on the left-hand side down the bottom, but that's the sort of scope that's going to happen now. These immersive environments are going to change the way that we teach, and we have to actually be embracing that. And when we talk about technology 5.0, we need to be aware of the tools that are out there, how to access them, and how they can actually improve our practice. Because it's pointless just having a technological tool if it's for no pedagogical advantage. So we need to make sure no matter what tool we use, that there's actually a pedagogical advantage in it, which is why John and I wrote Micro-Teaching 2.0. We used a very strong, well-recognised micro-teaching plan, teach, assess cycle, and use technologies within that. So I think there's going to be lots of merging of really good pedagogies with technologies, and that's going to be really creative. I think there's going to be some creative outcomes in that space. The other thing about simulation in the future is that when I look back in the 1970s, if I wanted to grab some information, we had the whole bank of encyclopedias. I think we even used to have encyclopedias, people going around selling them to communities. So encyclopedia has been replaced with Google, with the internet, and everyone sort of looks up Dr. Google all the time. But these immersive spaces, the ones that I've just shown you, they have got the capacity to take us and transport us to the past, to the present, and into the future. And as a useful tool for future teachers, I think it's important that we recognise that and we embrace the emergent technologies, and we have to be creative. But whatever we do, we have to not forget that our fundamental purpose of using any technology is to be diagnostic in our approach and address the needs of the students in our classrooms. So that's some of the research that we've sort of drawn from, and I just wanted to show you the partnerships that we've done with Murdoch, with Newcastle, with Central Florida. And you can just go to any of our websites and you can find it. But what I want to do is go back to this one, teacher education, and put this on you. University of Surabaya, you're the House of Champions, which means that I'd love to, and you are risk takers, you are taking over, and looking at simulation and ed technologies, and I'll challenge you to improve on that, as I challenge my university, and as I'm sure Natasha at Murdoch are challenging their university to embrace the news technologies. We cannot let our future teachers not be up to date, and that's our role. So look, thank you for listening today. Any questions, I'm looking forward to answering them when we all get together later, but I think I've actually made it on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Su, for the nice presentation introducing Simlab to us. So I see that we have a lot of participants either in our Zoom meeting and also in YouTube. I would like to say hello to everybody. I can see here Frank Akbola also with us. Hello, Frank. Welcome. And also my friends Taufu here, and also my other friends from abroad. Welcome, and thank you for attending. And all the participants in YouTube, you also can participate by posting question in the chat box by following the format. All right, hold on the questions. I will read the question later on after our 3 keynote speakers talking, right? So we're gonna move to the next speaker, Dr. Natasha Rappa. Okay, Natasha, would you please, I will introduce you first. So I will share mine, right? Okay, Dr. Natasha Rappa is a lecturer and a researcher at Murdoch University, Australia. Her specialization is in technology and education, in the education discipline at the College of Science, Health, Engineering, and Education at Murdoch University. She has a lot of teaching experiences before at Murdoch. So she's teaching in Singapore. And the educational background of Natasha, she pursued her bachelor degrees with honors second upper division at National University of Singapore, and gaining her postgraduate diploma of education in Nanyang Technology University, Singapore, and doing her Master of Arts Educational Studies at University of Michigan, USA, and she got her PhD education in UK at the University of Sheffield. This is her employment history. So before at Murdoch, she has a lot of jobs to do in Singapore, and all about teaching, and also like working with the papers, general paper project work tutor, and being tutor and teacher as well. So this is the journal articles I just mentioned in 2020. She already published 3, and I believe that more journal articles coming in the coming years. Okay, Natasha, and hopefully one of them with me. And this is the book chapters that she writes down. In 2021, a book chapter entitled Supporting Students' Content Learning in Biology Through Teachers' Use of Classroom Talk Drawing on Concept Sketches. So all about technology in education. So I think that's all. We give the floor to Natasha Rappa. You can share your slides now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nelly. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Are you able to view my slides?
Yes, it's clear enough.
Yes, okay, that's great. All right. Well, selamat pagi. Unlike Sue, I'm not fluent in Bahasa Indonesia, so so all I can do is provide a greeting in a brief greeting in Bahasa Indonesia. All right. Sue has given you such a wonderful background information on how it all began with Teach Live, and then it moved on to immersion, and how given considerations about the time and the cultures, you know, it then went on to Murdoch University, then went on to establish the Simlab. And I like to point out, if it's not very evident to all of you, that really Sue was the architect of the Simlab, of the Simlab learning program at Murdoch University. And she has since moved on to University of Newcastle, and she's established the use of the Simlab there as well. And as you can see from her presentation, that she has big plans over at University of Newcastle to move into that sort of immersive technology to support that sense of presence, I believe, right, Sue? That sense of being present, socially present within that space to enhance the reality of the experience for students. So for myself, what I'll be doing in my presentation, I will be describing the Simlab learning environment as it is at this point of time, as well as the processes that are in place to facilitate our pre-service teachers' learning, and more importantly, their reflection on their practice. And in particular, I will be focusing on one key aspect of that program, which is known as the parent-teacher interviews or conversations. All right, let me begin with an acknowledgement of country first. We acknowledge the Wurjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of this country and its waters, and that Murdoch University stands on Noongar country. We pay our respects to Noongar elders past and present and emerging, and acknowledge their wisdom and advice in teaching and cultural knowledge activities. So in acknowledging the contributions of our First Nations people, I would also like to acknowledge where we are in the digital space, which is it's in a sense kind of like a third space in Australia as well as in Indonesia. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to present or share some of our initial understandings and findings regarding the Simlab. And I know that through this fantastic collaboration that we have with UNESA, I'm quite sure that we will find simulation technology and its implementation advancing in leaps and bounds as we cross cultural boundaries and see how the Simlab can be adapted to different cultures. All right, let's begin first of all with an overview of what the Simlab is. And I think Sue has actually covered some of this, so I won't spend too long on this. So the Simlab was established in Murdoch University as part of the call to better prepare teaching graduates. So based on that, and Sue has already mentioned this during her presentation, and Professor Fischetti will say more about this. All right, so the idea behind this is that the Simlab was just not technology that was being implemented. It was grounded in very sound research, sound education research. And then that was micro-teaching. So micro-teaching has been a valuable component of the education program since the 1960s. And micro-teaching involves pre-service teachers planning and implementing a short lesson with their peers or with a small group of students. And Sue and John, whom you'll meet later, drew on micro-teaching, the research on micro-teaching, to conceptualize this pre-service teachers teaching experience within the Simlab. And they published a paper in 2019 on this. You'll see that in my list of references later. Okay, so this is an overview of what the Simlab is. All right, as you can see, there are 5 occasions in a pre-service teacher's time at Murdoch University when they will participate in the Simlab program. There's the on-entry screening, which Sue spoke about at length. There's an initial introduction and lesson planning, so teachers learning how to introduce themselves, establish certain practices in terms of interactions, and then they move on to a focus on a teaching area and learning how to give feedback within that within that space, within that subject. And then the next stage would be in terms of classroom management and effective teaching strategies. And then finally, the parent and teacher interviews or conversations. So having, with this comprehensive program in place, it really exposes our pre-service teachers to a wide range of experiences and encourages them to trial strategies every step of the way, at every occasion when they are within the Simlab space. And it also gives them, they are able to receive one-on-one feedback many times over during the course of their degree. From the clinical practitioner, our Simlab clinical practitioner, Anne-Marie Griselli, who is attending today's session as well. Anne-Marie, could you just say hello within the chat? so if you have any questions as well, to direct at our clinical practitioner, she's here attending the session and will be able to answer your questions. And because of that constant contact with Anne-Marie, Anne-Marie gets a sense of who all our students are. She's the one who's exposed, who has that contact with every single one of our students. And she's able to highlight those who need support, additional academic support or social emotional support at the very outset, from the on-entry screening and in the very early stages when they're just learning how to introduce themselves and to plan their lessons and to implement a brief lesson. She knows what their needs are, and she's able to highlight the students who need additional support. Now, this mix of virtual and real elements produces both behavioral and emotional responses on the part of our pre-service teachers. So we'll see how well adapted they are to this initial exposure to teaching within the classroom space, or even to having conversations with parents. And we understand how we can step in and better support our pre-service teachers. Now, Sue has already shown this to you, so I won't spend too much time on this. Suffice to say that that the virtual experience is really played out in a lab context with a wall-mounted television, a television screen showing the student avatars in the classroom, or the parent avatar seated in a chair in an office facing the pre-service teacher. And this view of the student avatars or parent avatars can be remotely accessed via a Zoom link computer. So that's that's the advantage of that. And I like to foreground this because with UNESA taking on board this, and we hope eventually UNESA will consider working towards a site license and being the forerunner in terms of established Simlab within Indonesia, that the opportunities can be created here for everyone across Indonesia. And we're accessing almost 1,000 people across this great nation, right? And so with UNESA having that, being able to establish itself using immersion technology, then across Indonesia, pre-service teachers across Indonesia would be able to access the program that's being offered, and be able to put into practice some of the skills and the knowledge that they've learned, and hopefully being able to have that opportunity to access this platform multiple times over the course of their degree, just as we do here over in Murdoch University and of course over in the University of Newcastle. Right, so this distance between the educator and the student is not a factor. Right, so let me say a bit more about the theoretical foundations here. So the Simlab is really critical to initiating in that intentional reflection. It is, the whole simulation experience is embedded within an experiential learning cycle, COPE's experiential learning cycle. So the pre-service teachers interacting with the student avatars or parent avatar, and this experience is then followed by a coaching session with a clinical practitioner, Anne-Marie, to help them reflect on their words and actions during the simulation experience, and to consider the strategies for managing students or managing their discussions with a parent. Now, this interaction is also recorded for pre-service teachers to view it again to facilitate their reflection on action, and to record these reflections in their portfolio. So we have a portfolio for all students. It's known as a Pebble Pad portfolio. So they record these reflections as well, so that the learning is not lost. And that's an important aspect, so that they can keep revisiting this portfolio, reviewing their reflections and thinking about how they can use this to improve their practice. And their reflections are based on a structured approach known as situation, action, and outcome. And I must say that a number of structured approaches were initially piloted and tested in the initial run of the Simlab, and eventually it was agreed upon that this structured approach, the situation, action, outcome, was most beneficial in terms of getting students to think about the context and how they responded to the context, and seeing the relationship between their response to that context or that situation and the outcomes that resulted from it. And based on that, thinking about how they can change or transform their actions so that different outcomes can be yielded or can be produced. So this is what is known as the practice, coaching, and reflection cycle. Right, so let me move on to the next bit. So this is the more exciting bit, right? Which is the introduction to the student avatars. So as you can see, the list has actually grown. All right, initially I think we began with 5, I believe, Sue, right? We began with 5. So you can see that there are now 8 avatars. And there's a new avatar that's being developed right now. I won't say too much, let that be a pleasant surprise here. But I think the latest addition here is actually, as you can see, Nate Pittman. And Nate has been diagnosed with high-functioning autism spectrum disorder. So Sue was talking about UNESA's specialization in learning disabilities. So this would be something of interest to you. So as you can see, this is a very diverse group of learners. They are diverse in terms of their ethnic and cultural backgrounds, and in terms of their specific learning needs and preferences, as well as in terms of their personalities. And the whole idea behind this is, as time goes on, we can perhaps look at the student teachers or the pre-service teachers' interests. And if there is that interest in teaching students with learning disabilities, maybe that could be a focal point for them in terms of their experience within the Simlab. So let me just play this video for you, and you'll get a sense of, in this video, this is an example of one of our pre-service teachers using a strategy to get the students' attention and then encouraging specific classroom behavior, such as raising hands before and waiting to be called upon before responding, so that it's a more organized interaction within the classroom. It's more manageable. So let me play this for you. Are you able to hear the sound?
No.
Is there no sound? Oh, okay, sorry.
No sounds, Natasha.
Sorry, is that?
No.
Yeah. Okay, let me just, okay, I didn't heed.
I think you forgot to share sound.
Yeah, I didn't heed Nanny's instructions earlier, which was always make sure, all right, that I share my sound. Okay, let me share my sound now. Okay, let's begin again. Okay, you can hear it? All right, let's go.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Now, my name, as you can see up here, is Mr. Wickham, and I will be taking you for a very quick maths lesson. Now, I see you already know what the goal is when I hold my hand up like that, but just for a bit of extra housekeeping, if we do get a bit excited, a bit rowdy, that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But if we need to pull it back in, you'll just see me do the 3, 2, 1 countdown. Beautiful. So, despite the fact this is a maths lesson, I'm going to start with the rather underwhelming activity of asking everybody here to describe these envelopes to me. If you can tell me one thing about these envelopes, could you just put up your hand?
White. Oh, sorry. White.
Thank you, Ethan. Hands first, please. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, I forgot.
That's okay. You know now, and it won't happen again. They're white. That is very much correct. Would anyone else like to share an observation about these envelopes? Jasmine?
They're flat.
They're flat? Excellent.
Really close to being flat.
Yes, that is correct. Anyone else? Yes.
Well, they don't have anything written on them.
100%. And we'll take one more before moving along from Ava.
So they're a shape, they're a rectangle, but they're not made out of a rectangle, they're made out of a bigger shape because it gets folded in.
Beautifully said, Ava.
Okay, so let me just move on. Okay, to the next slide. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, let's move on because the video does run on for quite some time. So let me just begin with this. Now, and now we meet the parents. And this is what I'll be focusing on for the rest of the presentation. So as you can see, for the parents, they have different personalities as well, just like the student avatars. And as you can see, there's Linda and Max, and really between the two of the parents, I think most of our students are a little bit more apprehensive of meeting Max because Max is very direct and he's very task focused. And as you can see later from the video, how blunt he is with the student teacher. And it is quite confronting for our pre-service teachers. In the first encounter, they find it quite confronting. But having Anne-Marie there as the clinical practitioner, you can see the role that she plays in really coaching them and preparing them for that second interaction with the parent. And because of that coaching that takes place And you will see in the video that I'm about to show you, you can see that the student is far more prepared in terms of his response to the parent. The pre-service teacher is far more prepared in his response to the pre-service to the parent. So this video runs for some time, but I think it's useful for you to see what's going on here in terms of the student's initial response. I've blocked out the student's face just to give him a bit more privacy, given that there are over 1,000 participants watching this. Okay.
My name's Max. I'm looking to speak to my son Ethan's teacher. Is that you, or you're the school secretary here?
No, I'm the school teacher. I'm Ethan's teacher. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. What was your name again?
Mr. G.
So many teachers. Mr. G. You can call me Mr. Mullen Hardy then. Yeah, all right, Mr. G. Look, I've got a bit of an issue about what's happening in your class yesterday, because Ethan comes up to me after I get home from work yesterday, and he's actually rather visibly upset, because what he tells me is that in the middle of your class yesterday, he started getting visibly abused, and then he rolls his sleeves up and shows me he's actually got bruises all over his arms from where he's been thumped. So what I want to know is, what the bloody hell are you doing allowing this type of behaviour to happen in your classroom? Don't you have some sort of duty of care to make sure my son doesn't get abused? What the hell is going on that you're allowing this to happen?
We absolutely have a duty of care to look after students. And I definitely did not see any violence occurring in my classroom. Otherwise, it would have been stopped immediately.
What? Wait, I'm sorry, Mr. G. Let me just stop you right there. So what you're saying is that you've got a duty of care to make sure my son is going to be safe in your care, and you didn't even know that he was being physically and verbally abused. That's what you're telling me, aren't you? That you have no idea what the hell is going on in your classroom while my son is being thumped. Right? And that's just not good. I knew this would happen as soon as we got the graduate teacher. So you know what? I'm just going to go to someone who might actually be able to do their job effectively and make sure that my son's going to be safe in their care.
Charlie, I'll get you to stop the recording or pause the recording while we have a chat.
Okay.
Down the bottom on your toolbar. Perfect.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So,
we do warn you that the first one's going to be short.
Yeah. Sorry.
So,
no worries.
All right. So what do you think you did well in that meeting?
Not a lot. I didn't introduce myself properly. I didn't call myself Charlie. I should have been more familiar straight away. Far out.
Yeah.
I should have, as soon as he said that the son had been abused, I should have probably taken the emphasis of myself and not been defensive. I should have probably said to him, oh, I'm sorry to hear that your son has been hurt. Is he okay now? Is everything, I should have, I could have done a lot better.
Yeah, and again, and Charlie, all those things that you're saying are exactly the feedback I would have given you as well.
Yeah.
And that's it, and that's why
it just happened so fast.
Yeah, and look, and it's going to happen if you run into the parent in the supermarket or if you run into them in the car park. You're not going to have that time to mentally prepare. It does happen fast, and and it's amazing how Simlab can, you're talking to an avatar. It's not even a real person, but yet that anxiety level, and the emotions that we feel are, just as if it was a real person.
All right, so you can see there that even then, the student is actually, the pre-service teacher is actually reflecting immediately. You can see his responses. He realized immediately almost what he did wrong, that he was being very defensive. I didn't know. And those reflections are captured on video. All right, as Anne-Marie actually went on to give him further information on how he can improve his interaction with the parent. And I'm going to play the next video for you. And you will see from this next video how the students' responses has changed.
Where I've been physically or verbally abused either. So how are you letting this happen? What's going on?
Okay, so first, thanks for coming to me with this. Your concerns are that that Ethan came home yesterday. He was visibly upset. He had bruising on his shoulder, and he's concerned about his safety in the classroom. He thinks they may be getting bullied. Is that right?
Well, if he's got bruises and stuff on his arms, I think it's a bit of a given that he's getting bullied, mate, to be honest with you. And like, yeah, I wouldn't want to go, he doesn't want to come back to a place where he's putting himself in that situation. And quite frankly, I'm a bit loath to do it myself, because I wouldn't go into it. And I'm sure you wouldn't want to go into somewhere that's been happening for you as well.
No,
you know?
absolutely not. And then Ethan's welfare is our number one concern. I plan on meeting up with him immediately. But as soon as I leave here, you know, before my next class, I'm going to go and speak to him immediately, and we're going to go through this. This is completely unacceptable if this is what's going on, and it's all about making sure that Ethan feels safe and happy, because he's doing great work with us at the moment, and he's a valuable student of mine, and yeah, we're going to take care of him.
Oh, well, good. I appreciate that, because look, I've got to trust that, like, I'm not at the school, so there's nothing that I can do. So I've got to trust that you can sort of step into my shoes and make sure that my son is safe. I've got to trust that that can happen. So, and my trust is just wavering a bit at the moment if this is what's happened, you know?
Mate, behind me, though, there's a whole support system of people that can help. You know, I'll get the head of learning area involved. We've got school student support officers. We have all kinds of people that, you know, we can bring into this, and we're going to get this sorted ASAP, because it's a number one priority now. So I'm going to speak to him, and we're going to sort this out.
All right. So you can see that there is that difference. All right. In the second session, the pre-service teacher was paraphrasing the parent's concern and seeking confirmation that he has understood the situation correctly. He was emphasizing his concern for the son's welfare, and that he appreciates the urgency of the matter, and that he values the son, the student. And he was also reassuring the parent that it's not he alone who would intervene, but there was an entire support system to assist his son. So you can see the transformation just within one session alone, with the coaching that was given by the Simlab clinical practitioner. Oh, lovely. And okay, let's move on.
Thanks for right being physical.
Okay, so this is the feedback that we've received from our students, that the experience was useful to them, and it gave them the opportunity to learn about their individual strengths and weaknesses, and gave them that to make the mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and they're much better positioned to deal with to manage all that interaction with their parents, and to be able to be successful in their interactions. Now, just to briefly share some of the findings that were shared at the Escalite conference in 2019. So some of the emergent themes were that the pre-service teachers were developing greater awareness of their initial reactions and actions. That they were building they felt that they were building confidence within a safe environment. And they were trialing strategies. They were trying to see what worked for them, what didn't work for them. So this is really important. And they were learning through that practice, coaching, and reflection cycle. They really valued the presence of that Simlab clinical practitioner, giving them feedback. Now, some of the conclusions here were that they valued the multiple opportunities to trial and practice different strategies. And then they were using that to build a knowledge bank of situation-specific strategies that would be of use to them in the future. And what's important here also was the mixed reality learning environment, the fact that we weren't using non-player characters or artificial intelligence alone, that these were human actors or interactors controlling the avatars. And because of that, these avatars had a far more human-like quality. So it enhanced our pre-service teachers' sense of that social presence within that space. And the Simlab also supports reflection on practice. They were able to engage in a meaning-making process about their actions and their reactions, which would help to solidify some of their responses. So they would pick up ideas about how they could respond, and these would become habitual practices that they can carry with them into their placements. They were also provided with models they could use to engage in reflection systematically, such as the situation, action, outcome approach. And they were supported in their interactions with a more knowledgeable other, Anne-Marie, the Simlab clinical practitioner. And they acknowledged their professional growth from this experience, from their Simlab experience. In terms of the strategic integration of the simulation within the learning process, so what was critically important was that there was follow-up in terms of feedback, coaching, reflection. It was just in time information from a knowledgeable other, and there was just in time application of that learning, so that subsequent iteration in the parent interview, allowing them to put into practice what they just learned from the Simlab practitioner, was critical in terms of consolidating their understanding of what they just learned, of some of the strategies they've just learned from the Simlab clinical practitioner. And these were the references from Sue and John. So do take a look at them in terms of the micro teaching as the foundation for the design of the Simlab experience. And in terms of my sharing at Escalite, a fairly recent conference on the parent interviews. Right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Natasha. Wow. Everybody is impressive with your presentation. And also, Sue remind me that we have a lot of possibility scenarios within Simlab technology. Probably we can try the other scenarios later on for the next research. And together with other departments in our faculty, we have here a Department of Special Education and also Management Education. And then you remind us during your presentation that the duty of teachers not only to the students, but also to the parents. So we're missing that. So I think next time we can try it out to our students, how to interact with parents. That's a good exercise for them then. Thank you, Natasha. That's so insightful. We have a Professor John Fischetti with us now here. Good morning, Professor John.
Good morning, Annie, and good morning to all of our colleagues.
Nice to see you here. Finally, we can meet virtually here.
It's my honor.
Before Professor John's session, let me share my screen to introduce him through his CV. Can everybody see my screen now? All right. Professor John Fischetti from the University of Newcastle. He is the Pro Vice Chancellor. It's an honor to have you here with us. College of Human and Social Futures, University of Newcastle, Australia. So he obtained so many degrees from Bachelor of Arts in Economics and American Government in the University of Virginia, USA. And then the master degree from Old Dominion University, Norfolk, USA. And he pursued his doctorate degree in Doctorate of Education at University of Massachusetts Amherst. He has so many experience as leaders in the universities in Australia, and also I think one of it from Los Angeles, right? Yeah, Louisiana University. So we met a great mind. So the research focus over the last 25 years, he has focused on rethinking pedagogy, assessment, schooling, and teacher education. So his equity-driven message is incorporated in his work with undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD students, and his leadership of school and faculty. this is the selected publications. Actually, more's coming, but so I highlight this one in 2019. He has a publication in Simlab Technology entitled Pre-Service Teachers' Confidence and Preferred Teaching Strategies Using Teach Live Virtual Learning Environment, a two-step cluster analysis. I think this one together writing with Sue, right? And this is the latest one, also still in the technology and education. For too long, school have been placed since young people go to watch their teachers work. Oh, nice quote from John. All right, so Professor John, without further ado, I give the floor for you.
Neni, good morning to you and to the wonderful colleagues in Indonesia and around the world who are tuned in. Thank you so much for including me, and I really appreciate Susan's and Natasha's presentations, and I'll try to do them justice because they've given you such a good view of what's been happening in this work. And I appreciate Sue's leadership of bringing this to Australia. And we were piloting some things, and it's through this partnership we've been able to expand, and working with you all will be our complete pleasure as we work together more closely. I'm also very thrilled to be on with educators who are open to the possibility of change and opportunity. I want to share that just at the beginning of my relatively short presentation. Look forward to your questions and our ongoing partnership. First of all, thanks for all of you who are on today. I know time is very valuable and you're doing so much work to keep everything going during this difficult time, and I really appreciate it. And as both Natasha and Sue have done, I really want to acknowledge that I'm actually not on the land of my people, but on the land of the traditional custodians who are the original first Australians, and pay my respect to all the various nations that we as a university serve, and pay my respect to the wisdom of elders past and present. As you said so well, this quote of mine, if you had to say what my brand might be, is that I think we've designed schools really well as long as students show up and we put them in seats and we do a lot of talking. And in education, sometimes we send them out to their first practicum, we put them in their first experience, and they become as expert learners because they've been in schools their whole lives, but we wonder why things don't change in schools. Therefore, we're holding on to the schools that we know rather than evolve the schools that we need. And we really want to change the way in which pedagogy is involved, particularly getting students actively involved, which actually means we also have to change assessment. So how do we get our teacher candidates willing to challenge even the assumptions of schooling as they exist, the way in which we negotiate the role of a teacher and a student, and what even assessment is, and what better way to do that with practice before prac. And in the world we've been in the last 18 months around the planet dealing with COVID, many people think we're really behind, like we've fallen behind. I think we've gotten ahead because actually we're practicing new things that are actually part of those skills that we'd love our new teacher candidates to exhibit, like accepting change and honoring flexibility and thriving in ambiguity and practicing self-regulation where students own their own learning. There's a lot of that happening around New South Wales during lockdown in the last month. And promoting the common good, a social value with that as a teacher, we're here to help society be better. And across the cultural differences and language differences, even on this Zoom today, we really have the opportunity to be one planet operating for our common good. What a wonderful thing to have worked toward in the last year. It might not have gotten as much literacy and numeracy done, but I'll trade these in anyway. I think it's been okay. We also have these skills that we're trying to build in our teacher candidates, not just literacy and numeracy that many ministers might like us to be doing, but adaptive reasoning and critical thinking and creativity and problem solving and collaboration and open-minded well-being, indigenous perspectives, cultural competence, global awareness, ethics, digital literacy. All these things are now on the plate of a teacher. And it's quite overwhelming, particularly if we throw them into a school that has a maker space. So they're trying to do engaged stuff. And they may not have thought that their job was actually to empower kids to be the best they could be, not just to cover chapter 23 by the end of the school year. And we have to build their confidence to be able to take this on. And in comes then our opportunity to work in this mixed reality environment that Natasha and Sue have explained so well. Some of these are next gen kind of skills, the ability to create, connect, and collaborate. And I'm not sure many teacher education programs now really think about those three. So then when we're implementing curriculum, we're actually doing that, allowing children to create and be part of their own co-constructing their knowledge, connecting our theory to the practice, which is something we don't always do in the first year of our courses, at least in our neck of the woods, and then collaborating with each other and getting lots and lots of feedback on that process. So when we implement our teaching, it's really about that common good, not about just getting through till the end of the year. You've seen the demonstration of this, and many of you have been part of some of what Sue and Natasha and the team have already presented. But this is a way to get students launched into this more than coming to a big lecture hall and listening to us talk about theory and then eventually getting to practice. And what Sue and I developed in the partnership we evolved now a few years ago, Sue, it seems like yesterday, but it wasn't, I'm afraid, is that we could do this around engaging with the professional teaching standards earlier by practicing them, starting to do what you signed up for right away, teach, which is amazing what they've been doing at Murdoch right away to get into the program. You got to do this. Okay, well, you're taking this seriously. An opportunity to practice in a safe environment where actually I've seen students run away crying from their simulation and actually had to tell them it wasn't real and bring them back in and do it again. And all of a sudden they were fine. Experiencing and using the innovation technologies, which are now all around the world more the norm and will increasingly be, particularly in rural areas, remote areas, island nations, and in areas where disease and or fires or natural disasters continue to interrupt the normal schooling process. Connecting theory and practice and opportunities for collaboration and reflection with each other. Do we early on in our programs build that reflective capability with peers? Because we've done a lot of group processes using the Simlab. We also know the literature might reveal that the weaknesses of our students, and this, we could go back to how old I sounded there, Nina, in your introduction. I got my degree in 1986. But we might say that the weaknesses of our graduates quite often are noted by school people, that they're not effective planners for diverse learners, or their classroom management. That's an age-old conversation, at least here in Australia. That feedback and assessment is something that is a little weak. And their parent care engagement, well, you just had to watch what Natasha just shared to say, we all can do better on that. And what a better way to be confronted as that amazing student was with a pretty hostile parent. Nobody signed up for that. We also know that this allows us, and our partnership allows, to practice our teaching inside the safety net of a simulator, the same way pilots use a simulator in their training. Every pilot in the world goes through hundreds of hours of training, yet we tend to send our students straight out into schools. And I know Sue talked about that a little earlier, that we teach lessons to a small class and developmentally appropriate behaviors simulated by a live interactor. This really is micro-teaching 2.0. The context for this is really still in the roots of micro-teaching, but with this live interactor, we're in this mixed reality environment that really stands on its own, and for most of our students feels extraordinarily real to them. We can't get people to tell us it's not real. And to participate in the parent and care interview scenarios allows us to really get to, in New South Wales and in Australia, the last teacher standard is engaging with parents in the community. And we've not done as well as we could there. I think, and then he was talking about that just a minute ago. We've got more to do there to get them ready for that part of the job. So our multi-year study of this effort has focused on 6 areas. The building of self-confidence, and most of the literature in preparing teachers or nurses or other people-oriented professions talks about that being the first thing, is people being willing to put themselves out there to try it on, but then also to get feedback, which is really our job in education, to give our students feedback so they grow. Then planning for the success of diverse learners, enhancing classroom management skills by actually practicing it, not just taking the theory, and then later going out and applying those, engaging with parents and carers as we've discussed, and then accepting critical feedback about all of that, because it's a big ask to be a new teacher. All the time, people are telling you what you could have done better, and how do you build that acceptance of that, and also the self-promotion and mentoring that you need to do as well, and then be able to self-reflect on whether learning actually has taken place, because the goal of teaching is actually learning, not just hearing ourselves talk, and that notion of effectiveness. So here, as we adopted Simlab, we used the terminology Teach Live, and as Susan has talked to you, we're adopting even new language as we merge the efforts together. But our notion as we've marketed this to our students about practicing, rehearsing, and reflecting in a safe, risk-free, mixed reality learning environment. That's a lot of words and it sounds confusing, and then it gets fun from there. So teachers' reflective practice from the literature involves continually considering the quality of their work, reflecting upon action and impact, what underpins constant improvement of that learning. And then the widespread reflective practice is what really effective teachers do. And that's what separates the masters from the novices, is really the continued ongoing reflective practice. And that looks really different when you're a first-year student. If you're a school leaver, that means you might be 18 years old coming into our program. You're moving into this profession with not 100% certainty about that this is right or that you're confident. And for mature age students coming from another industry into our programs, who it's a shell shock, a little bit of an earthquake that they have to feel of what it is to be in university again, but also what it means to be sort of put into a situation of learning in a formal way after maybe being years outside of a formal classroom. So what I'm about to share with you is very novice, right? But we're really interested, can we impact self-confidence? And I want to show you 3 examples from a methodology that we used. I don't know if any of you have used the app called Flipgrid, but as we went through the ethics process, we got approved to use Flipgrid, which is an app for your iPad or your tablet, which allows you to take videos immediately, very short vignettes. And people tend to like it because you're basically answering a key question and have about a 45-second window in which you can give a response. And we got this approved for the first time through our ethics panel here as a way to gather some qualitative research in vignettes that are pretty powerful that we've analyzed for the publications we have and a couple that might be coming soon. So these are students in their early experiences talking about their first interaction with Simlab.
Hello, my name's Rose Little. I did the Teach Live session on Friday and I thought it was a great experience. It really gave me the opportunity to practice teaching in a safe environment, which was really, really important. I haven't been out on prac yet, so I really, really valued that session, just in matter of planning a lesson as well as delivering it. I haven't had much experience in that sort of setting just yet. So it was really helpful to kind of gauge what I need to do, how I need to interact with the students as well. And it really helped with my lesson planning as well. One thing I would change in the lesson, I did it on celebrations and what different celebrations there are and how different people celebrate different things. I would include more resources at the start of the lesson to kind of flesh out more of an understanding of what actually a celebration is, how it can differ from culture to culture. Different families potentially don't celebrate the same thing or do it in the same way. So I'd really like to show a bit more. Even a video could have been really helpful for the students to just give it an understanding and change the answers to have a bit more variety other than just Christmases and birthdays as the 2 main celebrations, because it's really, there's a lot more that people celebrate. So I'd really like to do something like that. I think that being my first kind of introduction to actually teaching in front of students, I haven't had that experience. I don't have a lot of experience with that just yet. It was really great. Into building my self-confidence in myself in being in front of students, as well as planning a quality lesson and getting direct feedback in a safe environment where I can critically reflect on my own practice and try and improve in the moment as well as in future lessons as well. I'd love to have another go, maybe even doing a bit more of a specific lesson, maybe on an English or a maths lesson, just to build my skills in that as well. And have a bit more self-confidence teaching and interacting with students, I think will be really great before I go on to prac, or even throughout my degree would be really helpful. Relating certain topics that we're learning in different courses directly to a class, which we wouldn't get unless we were out on our pracs.
That's right. So there's Rose. Isn't she amazing? Now, she's a very novice teacher. She self-disclosed, but that's one 10-minute lesson. And she's so switched on. She's just nailed it. We got this. Her self-confidence that she's grown, the willingness to take feedback, because we do have, as Natasha mentioned, we have a colleague who's giving her feedback. And the other component of this, we made this kind of COVID proof where we did these virtually during our previous lockdowns. And of course, currently we're continuing to do this virtually from people's homes. And that allows us to do this in rural and remote areas, as well as during times when we can't actually be on campus to do things in what is actually our sim lab, a room with a wonderful screen. And as Natasha showed us a little bit earlier. So there's a poster child. You would expect we paid her to say all those things. She just did it off the cuff, pushing play on talking to herself. Let me just show you two others.
Hello, my name's
Sorry,
Rose
Rose.
Little.
That's enough, Rose.
Hello.
The Teach Lab experience was an incredible opportunity to practice and enhance my classroom management skill set and my lesson planning. The constructive feedback that was provided following the experience has enabled me to reflect upon and improve my current teaching practice. I also feel like I've gained more confidence within a classroom setting, and I actually feel prepared to complete my first prac. I strongly believe that Teach Lab is something that all undergraduate teachers should experience at least once.
So again, we didn't pay her to say it. She sounded like she's a model for our program, but in that sense, she's never taught formally before. And wouldn't you rather, before we put our students out in front of our kids, have someone who's done some practice and gain that confidence in all the ways we've described so far? Let's just try one more.
The Teach Lab.
The little goggle she's wearing is just her screen reflecting. It's not, she hasn't done a virtual reality lesson here. It's just her glasses reflecting the screen.
The Teach Live experience was a great opportunity to put my lesson planning to practice and actually teach. It has definitely improved my confidence in teaching in front of an audience. The experience has highlighted what I did well and what I can improve in the future, and has allowed me to reflect on the experience to improve my future teaching practices. Something I believe that I did well was engage the students and build a relationship and got the students to access their background knowledge. I think I can improve in explicit teaching, but overall it was a really fun experience.
So there's someone who hasn't really taught, getting a lot out of that one lesson. Now, imagine as they go forward to do more, what the opportunity is, but our research project has really been right at that first start of this. And I think it's such a great opportunity for us to work together and partner on this part of the research, getting our students prepared for when they actually are in teaching, and to get them reflecting means we've turbocharged their experience. And as Susan and I have talked more recently, it also makes more relevant our courses on campus. It makes more relevant what we're bringing to them because they see the application. And quite often there's a disconnect of timing between when we deliver certain things to them and when they actually get to apply it. They can go right in the sim lab and do it right now. And of course, if it doesn't go well, they can do it again. There's not that risk, but we believe it'll help drive the benefit of our core courses and for some of the discipline courses that they take outside of education. A final component that we've added just in the last year or two with our wonderful colleague, Deborah Donnelly, who's taken this another way. And I'm not sure any of you, as Susan, have talked about this, but we'd love to talk about it with all of our participants. I don't know how many of your students don't go well in their first experience. We have about 10% in our program who do not. It might not be their fault. It might be a very difficult or challenging situation, or maybe their partnership teacher isn't quite ready. But a lot of times our students don't really have that skill set to go well, and they fall over and they fail their first prac. Unless it's been something illegal or unprofessional that they've done, we have a legal right or moral right to give them a second go. And in the past, we waited 6 months, looked at the clock and sent them back in. Hey, go try again. That may not be the right approach, by the way. That might not be best practice. So what Deborah's developed and what we've implemented last year with 29 students is a group program for support with specific personal support with expert staff, because it might be their planning was weak, or their content knowledge was weak, or their confidence was low, or they didn't really know how to explain things to students. Or if you get to meet Savannah, who's one of the avatars, you better talk about volleyball because she likes volleyball. And we do a series of workshops, and they go into the sim lab to practice. And then we have a whole bunch of skill builder resources around it. So that's a whole nother strand of our research that we're emerging, is in giving extra practice to students who don't go well in their first placement. And so that we can honor with our school principals that we're not sending back rejects to the school to try again, because it's really hard to find placements and say, oh yes, take a bunch of our students that fell over, please. And so if we can guarantee we've gone back into the Simlab and given them a series of extra support, Teach Ready is one of our next inventions that we think is not done anywhere else yet, except for those of you who will copy it today. So as was mentioned earlier, we do have some publications that help us document a lot of this. This is one of those, another one, and we have got others out there that you can find as well. So my attempt was to take what Natasha and Susan have just presented so well to you and attempt to put that specifically to what we've done here, and to really hone in on the research that we're really excited on that sounds pretty elementary or rudimentary, but is so fundamental. If we can get our students confident to actually go forward in their practice, ready to plan for diverse learners, ready to take feedback, and ready to think about what they're going to do to get all students actively involved, we might have a chance at giving them a real leg up on what our whole program's intended to do. So I know we've moved through 3 presentations, and that's a lot of information, but I think we're moving now to the chance for you to ask questions of us. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share all of that with you. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
The next presentation regarding all research involved in Simlab Technology. And also, I think the funding that's already happened in Australia or abroad also happened here in Indonesia. But especially for our students, the challenge is not only for the teaching skills, but also for the language. So language, culture is the big issues for our students when they are doing Simlab. Okay, now we have a Q&A session. I have one of my students doing Simlab here. I think who will do the testimony for a while before we go through the questions on YouTube. All right, operator, can you highlight Arum? Please. Hello, Arum. Assalamualaikum.
Hello, Miss Nani. Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, here we have Arum, who has done Simlab with us, and then I think he delivered such a good lesson, right, during the Simlab presentation. So, would you please share your experience, your feeling, and your struggles, Arum?
Yes, of course. Thank you for this opportunity, Miss Nani, and all the participants. I'd like to share my experience during the Simlab sessions. My micro-teaching activities with Simlab became a valuable experience for me. That activity forced me to do something beyond my limits. I learned many lessons through the session, especially how to build bonding with the students during the learning activity, how to pay attention to the students with the different characteristics, and speak English more confidently. Not only useful for me, the experience is also useful for my friends, because right now I'm currently doing an internship at an elementary school with other friends from different majors. With my experience from Simlab session, I can share with them the little of my useful knowledge to create a good learning activity in elementary school. I think that's all I can say because my time is limited. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Arum. Thank you for the great testimony anyway. Yeah. So you see the struggles of our students are in language, and also the focus of teachers here in Indonesia. Usually we think about the learning media and also the materials, the teaching topics, and so on and so forth. And we rarely think about the students, like the avatars, Ethan and Savannah, Natasha. Both are very challenging for our students. Usually, as the novice teacher, we think that it's difficult to control, like an active student. But actually, if you are trying to controlling the active students, you're missing the very silent students. So the example of Savannah here is really like engaging. So our students think that, all right, I'm doing a good job. And then Wade said, wait a minute, you forgot to say hi to Savannah. Because Savannah is too silent. So this is a good thing. So we are always saying that we have to do student-centered learning. So we have to do student-centered learning. But if the teacher focus only on the material, we can't do that. So we have to think about our students to do so. All right. I believe that we have 2 questions right now from YouTube participants. Operator, can you share the screen, please, for the question? Thank you, Ibu Ika. Yeah, this is our Simlab students as well. The question 1 is from Rory Annie from SDN Karangsono. I believe she or he is a teacher. Through Simlab, will we also get an expression response that is similar to field condition? Because the mood of students when they are happy, when they are bored, can also be an evaluation for the teacher. So I think the question addressed to all the speakers, right? Yeah, so do you want to start?
I think that's a very good question. And just so that you're aware, we can get the students to actually respond in whatever way we want. Remember we mentioned in our talks that you can set whatever scenario up that happens within a classroom. So you can make those students naughty, you can make them bored, you can make them whatever your teacher educator wants you to focus on.
Yeah. Natasha, do you want to say something more?
Yes, I guess maybe the question also pertains to how realistic are the facial expressions and the mannerisms.
Yes, and we try to bring the reality into the technology.
So I think that the interactors or the actors who are controlling the avatars play a huge part in that. You get the kind of responses, not the standard trite kind of responses that you would sometimes get with artificial intelligence, because we have human interactors and actors controlling these avatars. You do get very realistic responses, and they are, if you look at their dashboard, it's very complex.
Yeah.
That's the one picture we didn't show you. And with that controls,
behind the scene things.
Yeah, they're able to control the facial expressions and the actions of the avatar to convey those emotions of boredom and frustration or anger.
So yes, they have the expression, right? So probably Professor John, Sue?
I put that video in on immersion because there was a little snippet to show the next generation where they can wear gloves and different headgear. So the technologies behind the interactors are progressing as technology progresses. So the facial structures, the hands, etc., that will all even get better and better as technology does. But what won't happen is what Natasha said, it won't be straight AI. It needs that impromptu response from a human behind the scenes.
Yeah. About the human behind the scene, probably Prof. John can add something about human in loop in this technology. Prof. John?
I think the question is so good because we're at the infancy of this technology, not at the crescent of it. So a lot of that will be improved over time. A little more of the VR component will emerge. But I think it also means that this wonderful student is ahead of us in some respects, in that let's start by saying, do you know the names of the students? Do you know their likes and dislikes? Because if you don't, you don't know if they're sad because their mother's in hospital. So some of that stuff is, let's start a little slower than that by understanding the student and what motivates them. And then also we can build in, if you're an advanced student, we can tell the interactor, today we really want Eva, who's texting under the table most of the time, to really go seriously sad on us or very happy with us, or turn it around really easily with an intervention or not. So I think where the student is looking, can we play with this to mimic situations? At the novice level, we want students to sort of be able to take the blinders off and see the whole class and know it. But where they're going is to the next level of which can be continually tweaked, so that if they're ready for that, we can program the interactor to say, let's give them a little bit more real life dimension of the human emotion. Literally, their smile may not change because that's generation 3.0 maybe, but we can emulate that. But it also shows this student really understands the importance of the student in the moment in time and what life they're leading, not just in school. So I love the question.
Okay, thank you for answering the first question. Can we move to the next question, operator? Ibu Ika? Yeah, the second questions come from our Simlab student, Sinta Pramudia. Please give us some tips or strategies so we can link our experiences from Simlab programs in real life actions as well. Is there something we should aware about? Thank you. So you have to make your own conclusion, Sinta. So, but I think still our speakers can give a little tips for you. Yeah, who can start? Natasha, probably.
Okay, so what I'll do is I will share with you some of the situation, because I mentioned the situation, action, outcome, structure.
Mm-hmm.
So Anne-Marie, if you're here, do say something.
Yeah.
Okay, so
hello,
so
Anne-Marie. Do you want to say something, Anne-Marie?
She's had to pop out. She's just sent a note.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. So in terms of the reflections, I think it's important also for students to have some sort of structure to support that sort of reflection. So this is the structure that's used: situation, action, and outcome. So you can see how it works is that the students are asked to describe the scenario of the parent interview, then comment on how the first interview experience compared to the second. And then finally, in terms of the outcome, what were the issues they experienced in the parent interview? How did you overcome them? Then reflect on why you think your actions in attempt 2 were more effective. So these were some of the scaffolding questions that were provided to the students. So I think in terms of, if you're looking for something to support you, I think it's always good to think about this sort of a structure to support your reflection on your practice. And so try and use the same structure: situation, action, and outcome, and see if that supports you in terms of your participation in Simlab.
Oh, okay, I think we need to follow up the research because they are now doing internship at schools and they are working with Indonesian students. Probably they got, again, adapting the skills that they're doing in Simlab Technology to the real life where they have to face Indonesian students. So I think this is a bit challenging for my students to do so. So the point is in the reflective instrument that we can use after they're doing Simlab Technology, right, Natasha, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, that's right. I think the real advantage here, or the real benefit here is the reflection that they engage in after the practice. And active learning is important, but I think that reflection on that practice is critical, because that would generate improvements in practice.
All right.
And I believe Sue is now sharing.
Yeah, I think Ibu Sue can add something more because I see her name in the paper.
Sue, you need to unmute yourself.
Unmute first, yeah.
This is, I wrote this with Caroline Mansfield, Nenny, the Dean of Education at Notre Dame. Yeah, she does. Yeah, she does the BRITE, Building Resilience in Initial Teacher Education. It's a free online resource for well-being teacher wellbeing and resilience, and we included the teacher wellbeing and resilience online task, as well as providing them strategies for responding and reflecting. And this is what we do at the end of our second year placement, that they would have to do the B and R modules, because there's 4 modules: building resilience, one was resilience, there's a range of, and this is how they responded. They had to say what the situation was, what the action they took, and the outcome. But the plus, and we used to call it SAO plus, then what would you change or modify next time it happened? Because each time you do something, you're building up this sort of inherent sort of informed practice for next time. And everything just gets better and better if you're particularly wanting to look at continuous improvement. So every time they did their reflections, they use this situation, action, outcome, and then what would they change next time? So it's a very structured approach, and it's what we use now. I think what, Natasha, you're using in all of the reflection practices from 1st to 4th year, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's, just trying to think, it's actually a online chapter, but it's free. I'll just go up to the top. Sorry. Resilience building for pre-service teachers, Bright, which is the building resilience in teacher education, a free module. It's online, and it tells all the research about building resilience and well-being. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ibu. So it's interesting to see that you have a reflection format for engaging students, the continuous for a professional teacher program here. So the research is national one, and we work with 4 other universities together, and we built such a model for supervision. And some of my colleagues here involved in the research. Professor John, do you want to add something for the second question?
Yeah, I think I might just supplement, because Natasha and Susan have done such a good job. The first is that the role of the person who's giving the feedback to our students is very crucial. You can't just pop somebody in off the staff or off the street to do that. They have to be someone who has teaching experience, but also can scaffold the level of the feedback to where that student is. If this is the very first time they've taught something, we're not going to wear them out with all 3 aspects of that feedback. It might be we go with that last question of what would you do differently? We say, okay, because they may have already answered the question. They never stopped to say good morning to the students or whatever. So I think that person is the vital role, because if they were just teaching themselves, that's something, but it isn't really reflective practice because you haven't had any feedback from someone else. So I think that role is crucial. What we have, at least here at the University of Newcastle, is a teacher trained, properly registered teacher who also has practiced with us how to do that. So I don't want to leave out that important role. The interactor is vital. We couldn't do it without them, because that's what makes this unique. This is not a game. This is, and every time you do it, it will be different. So it is actually a real event. It's not a simulation. In fact, we use that word, and it actually is not. It's a mixed reality learning environment, which is a real teaching opportunity, but it's a safety net. But the person who's giving the feedback on how it went plays an equally vital role. And also then training up the peers, because we've used a peer teach environment where peers are watching each other to get good enough to give each other feedback, which is the original micro teaching research, where we might, the 4 of us on the screen right now, might give each other feedback. But how do you learn to do that? Because a lot of that can be self-regulated by a good supportive peer group who doesn't just say nice job. So I wanted to mention that component, because reflection has to be practiced. It just can't be assumed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Prof. John. So we have to be careful, right? During the reflection, we can do it directly, as you said, and we can do by practice, filling in the format that's already mentioned before in the research. So yeah, I think we can move to the next question. Before we move to the next question, I give opportunity for participants here in the Zoom room. Probably one of you want to give direct question to the, Zulfin? Do you want to
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, okay. First of all, thank you very much, Ibu Nani, for giving me time to ask
Welcome,
directly
Ibu
to the
Zulfi.
speaker. Yeah. How the cutting edge technology, so we can do classroom virtually using Simlab Technology based on the augmented reality. My questions is about, I have two questions actually. My questions first is the using of the Simlab Technology applications. Do we be able to custom the participant to be more? Because as I watch on the video that only maybe, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 5 or 6 students. So do we be able
participants.
to? Yeah, 5. So
5
my
to 9 avatars already.
Yeah. So my question is, do we be able to custom like more than 5? And my second question is, as I read on the Murdoch University website, that we can custom student characters so they can show their emotions, as we know that maybe a student has a different opinion, so they can show their agreement or disagreement. So how we custom the avatar so they can use the application optimally. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Sulfin.
Thank you.
Shall I repeat the question? No? Is it clear enough for you all? I think also the worry of our students when they see in the technology, they only say, oh, all right, ma'am, there are only like 5 students in the classroom. Then in the reality, they have to face like about 40 students in the classroom here in Indonesia. So
I can say that's the same in Australia too. Most of our classes are up to 30 students in a class. But what typically those 5 characters are the typical characteristics of the types of characters in your classroom. There will be 5 typically similar characters. Some will be loud, some will be quiet, some will be sticky beak, some will be whatever. So they're the types of characters. What you can do is there's some simulated backdrops that can put them into a bigger classroom. So it looks like there's 15 in the class, but only 5 can still sort of interact. So we can set up those classrooms. They're already available. But your second question about customizing a character, absolutely. And I think that's the one that Natasha was going to talk about, surprising us with what you're doing over at Murdoch. You're customizing a character.
Yeah, that's specific to the Australian context. But at this point of time, negotiations are underway, so I don't want to say too much. But the idea here is that, you know, having a character who's unique to this Australian context is great. And in the same way, I think having a student who represents the Indonesian culture, the background, I think that's important as well. And that's something that, Nani, you can look forward to in the future.
Yes,
as you work further.
You have that plan, so you have to prepare it. Anyway.
Sorry for interrupting. If you have a look on the Immersion website, there are already a different range of race, gender, etc. there. We've just chosen those ones to suit, you know, the Australian context. We're probably building up another one, but certainly there's opportunity to use one of those and modify that. It's already there. So good questions.
If you see the avatar performance, they are the outfit is multicultural students, right? So, and also like they try to represent, like Sue said, each character that students might appear in the classroom, in the real life classroom. And then they bring all those examples of characters to the avatars. And then students have to practice in the little one, number of students, in the little number of students. And then after that, hopefully they can, you know, like by gaining the experience, they can implement that to the real situation where they work with numbers of students. So Professor John?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think, Sophie, you've asked a really good question, but in some ways, you're 2 generations out in front of this where it will be much more dynamic. For this version, it's not perfect. And what you just raised was a really important thing to understand. That's also why we don't purport that this replaces prac. We're not doing this in lieu of, it's to help get ready. And if you can't teach the 5 students effectively, how are you even going to try to teach the 30? So some of it is scaffolding the expectations of our students that, first of all, This is an evolving technology like everything is. It gives you practice. It's better than teaching your peers, which is really a fake environment. This is much more real in its own way. Fascinating that it's more real, even though it's virtual. And then that's where we'll go. Eventually, we'll be in a virtual reality classroom that feels like there's 30 kids and we can simulate all of this. That's where it's heading. So you're out in front of it really well. But also, I don't really want to put you with 30 if you're not even going to ask Eva's name or you're not going to get Savannah involved. So let's start there. And then let's know that in versions 5, 6, or 7 coming down the road, the multicultural component is crucial, the language culture is crucial, and the variety of kids and their dispositions. What I don't like also, this is not a virtual world like some of the spaces are that people go to do their interactions in a avatar-based world. We're attempting to make this feel and act as if it's a classroom, but it really isn't, which I realize makes it very imperfect. And there's a lot of criticism of this work because we can't get them to sing and dance in the same way, and we can't go outside and jump around. But that's right. But at least let's try to take a short lesson, teach it as well as we can, and then we'll get into the real classroom and we'll really get serious. Yeah. So I know that's not. I'm not trying to make
can do. But I think the teacher can do jump out of the classroom and go around. All right. So I think that's interesting because if I want to criticize this technology as well, probably you think about the multicultural situation in the classroom, but at some points in our some regions in Indonesia, for example, you only work with very homogeneous students. So probably Simlab can also provide those kind of what about if the students are too homogeneous, not the multicultural one? So yeah. We also can think about it. All right, we have 2 raised hands here, but beforehand, I would like to say hi to our YouTube participants. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, so well, we move to the next question first before we talk with the raised hand participants. The next question, operator, please.
Nini, I can see one question in the question thing that asks about, tell more about the bilingual version.
Oh, that's Tao, the PhD students at Moodle. Tao, can you just turn on your camera and microphone? Hello, Tao.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spotlight, please. Tao Fu.
Yeah. I'm impressed with all the presentation and thank you for all speakers to give beautiful presentation today. Yeah, I have a question is about the bilingual version. Yeah, I know that Suze and other professors do very great job to make the Simlab technology available at Murdoch University and now available at Newcastle University. And Nelly, you also do a good job because now Simlab available in your university. So my question is, when you bring the version from USA, yeah, from University of
Florida,
yes, to Murdoch University, yeah, I think it's easy because students they all use English as the first language. But to Indonesia, but the version they use in the Indonesia university. So I'm thinking that how students can use the version and how does it work? Because students, some of them might be don't use English as the first language. They might be use English as the second language. And how can you, in your university in Indonesia, you improve the version, and how you make it to be more locally? I mean that make it to be familiar with the Indonesian student, and because the culture and the environment affect with the education, and maybe the way of teaching in Indonesia might be a little bit different with Australia's or USA context. So is my question. Yeah.
So you addressed the question to me now then.
I'd like to hear the answer from all of the speakers, but I stress first, Nelly, because you are my friend.
I'll just say it's lovely seeing you. It's so lovely to hear you. And just your language, your English language, when I first sort of met you, has improved enormously. So congratulations on your studies. You've raised a really interesting point, and I think it's important that you're aware that the person behind the scenes has the language abilities. All we need is the person behind the scenes to have that language. So at the moment, our interactors in Western Australia have English, Japanese, and I know they're recruiting for more people. Or English, Japanese. I think Alan has a language as well. I'm not sure if it's French, but we can recruit professional actors and teachers with a language. Now we can recruit them here or recruit them in Indonesia. It depends on how you do it. But the aim is, I mean, you can link up anywhere. I know a good friend of mine runs simulation in the Middle East, and they have just trained up an Arabic, so it was going to just international schools, but they've trained up an Arabic interactor over there. So then they can attend to those sorts of issues that you're talking about. But it depends on the purpose of it. Is the purpose, and in Nenny's sort of situation, I think her focus it was an English lesson, that she wants to develop the English language as a second language. But if it was developing just teaching skills, then it would make sense to do it in your first language, of course. Yeah. So it all comes back to the purpose and the context. And once you've established that purpose and context, that scenario is established, then you can do the simulation.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Yeah,
Oh.
I got the idea. Yeah.
Okay, so in my case, we select the students. So those that good in English and happy to be involved in the Simlab simulation, we ask them to do so. And then we focus only, not only on the teaching skills, but also in the English improvement of our students, because they are prepared to be international teachers. So that's why they have to get involved with the native speakers. And this Simlab, help them to improve their English as well.
So it means that in your university, you have a bilingual program for training teachers.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, they struggle with the English, like me. But yeah, that's they gain so many lessons from Simlab. Okay. And for example, I remember in the beginning of the Simlab, usually the operator, the interactor, they make the students noisy at the beginning, and then usually my college students, they didn't notice that they have to make the students calm first and make the condition calm in the classroom before they start the lesson. So those kinds of things. And in the reflection session, they asked me how to do so. What's in English we can say like hello or something else. Is there any cultural habits that the teachers in Australia, they usually do to make the students calm at the beginning of the class? So yeah, those kind of things. We discuss so many things during the reflection process. All right, we have one raised hand here. Miss Fira.
Yeah, I'm here. Wait a minute. Yeah. Is my voice clear enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ibu Neni. Thank you to all the speakers, and especially for Ibu Su. Your Bahasa Indonesia is so amazing. I think your Bahasa is better than me. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for the insightful information to all the three speakers. I'm quite interested with Professor John presentation when he showed the video from the students that the students said that the Simlab technology is really helpful in lesson planning and also delivering the lesson. And at the end, she said that she got a lot of feedback. My question is, who really did this feedback? Is the feedback comes from the students or it comes from the system? And the second question is, I think it's quite similar with the two question. Asking about the language. Is this Simlab technology has, I don't know, maybe multiple languages? Because when we talk about English, I think it's quite complicated for us, which is non-native speaker. I think about the pronunciation, is that the matter thing when we do the simulation with Simlab technology. And I think if the Simlab technology has a multiple languages, I think it is good for us, like from a country which is not talk English as my first language. And the third question is, is this Simlab technology is open access for public, or this is only for certain institution who has a license for it? I think that's all my question, and I'm waiting for the answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ibu Fira. For your information, Ibu Fira is our new lecturer in our department. So her focus on inclusive education. Probably in the next future, we can do something together with Simlab.
Sure.
For trying the new avatar, Natasha, what's the name? Nate, right?
Yeah, Nate.
The new avatar.
Oh, Nate. Yeah, Nate. Nate. Yes.
Okay. Okay, Professor John, I believe that.
I'll start off because I think Rowena directed the first question to me, and that's great. So what we do is we hire a casual staff member who works with us to provide that feedback. So they watch the lessons with our students. They're either solo in the Simlab or in a group, and then leads a discussion with some scaffolded questions like Sue and Natasha talked about earlier. So the feedback is driven by a casual staff member who's a teacher, who we've also prepared to do this because they practiced with us giving feedback and then determining for that student whether they were ready for a full several sets of feedback or just one for today. Because the disadvantage of feedback, it could overwhelm people and chase them away, and that's not our intent. It's really to give them feedback that gets them ready to come back and try again. So we start with the question, Rita, you just taught a really good lesson, but if you were going to teach it again, what would be one thing you do differently? And usually after they talk for 2 minutes, they've told us everything we might have given them feedback on, which is they went too fast or they didn't know their content, or a couple of the students they didn't interact with. And so usually our feedback comes just by asking that open-ended question. So we have to hire someone. How that's paid for has come from a little bit of a grant that we've gotten from a local teachers bank that helped pay at the beginning. And then it's also been supported by our School of Education, which we've had to invest in. The second question, I think Sue answered a little bit earlier, but I'll just sort of say it again. You're right. The avatars currently are more monocultural than diverse. That's evolving. But if an interactor spoke the language that you chose, although the visuals may still not be perfect, the language can be, by whoever's interacting can change that language just by who's leading that session behind the scenes. So that's easy to do verbally, less easy to do visually because there's technology around this. And Sue, you may want to handle the third question. I'm not sure if you want to do that. I don't want to overtalk here.
No, that's often what I do, John. I apologize. But no, the third question was related to, just remind me about that.
The license of the Simlab. The license
for the Simlab technology. Yes.
It's certainly not open access. One would hope that may happen in the future, but at the moment it's linked to those who've got a license. At the moment, Murdoch University is the only one with a license in Australia. And that's why I think in the future, the plans are that Indonesia, Surabaya will have their own license, because you might be able to get cheaper rates and you'll be able to train up. Yes. And typically with international companies, they typically will do that. So we're trying to keep rates as low as possible here, but it would make sense that you would sort of venture into doing the site license locally, training up local improvisation actors and things. But that's because we're a consortium now, because we're a collaborative team, our interactors will support your interactors in the same way that the Murdoch staff have been supported Newcastle, and Newcastle's now supporting Surabaya. That's just what happens when we become a collaborative network. There's
one of the disadvantages of this, as opposed to a game or a fixed simulation, is that it is kind of expensive to do, because we have to have the interactor and we have the person providing feedback. Yeah. And then we have to have somebody technically making sure it doesn't fall over. So the open access is an egalitarian wish, but right now each session is its own product that gets created, like this seminar today, and therefore there are those costs. So another is one of the reasons we're a research effort is it justifies seeking support from government and foundations and grants to help pay for that. So building in a research component is vital, because then we're providing to the knowledge base and maybe giving back to those funders how we're contributing, to the knowledge base in the field. So it's not perfect because it isn't cheap. And then in that sense, it does have that egalitarian component, which means it is exclusive, but it doesn't mean we're attempting to make money off it. It's just actually we're trying to pay for the costs of running it in real time.
Yeah, it's certainly not a money-making product. It's certainly just covering the costs of the interactors. And the focus, I think, John, your point about searching for research funds, that's what NENI has first instance to be able to get this first lot, the first trial. And so they'll be, within, it's something that in the East Java as consortia, it could be something that you develop there. I'm not sure, but there's lots of opportunities.
Let's try next to the opportunity offered by Natasha from the link, Australian link. We will talk about it later.
Sorry?
All right. The link that you provide to us for the next one.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. I believe we run out of the questions now. And I think this is the end of our webinar. But don't go anywhere, because I will hand over this to our MC, Master of Ceremony, Mr. Ulhak, to give some announcement and also provide the certificate to our great speakers. All right. Thank you very much for your attending, Prof. John Fischetti, Professor Susan Ledger, and Dr. Natasha Rappa. It's a very great to see you here and then share the experience on Simlab Technology with us. So hopefully we can be more collaborative research in the future, and also publications, and also some other trials on Simlab. All right. I hand over this to our Master of Ceremony, Mr. Ulhak.
Thank you, Ibu Neni. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Ulhak, sorry for that. I want to say hi to my friend, Art. Hi, Art. I will spotlight you first. Sorry for a moment.
Not a problem.
It's also my friends at Mura University from Thailand. What's your name, Art? Okay, I spotlight you now. Oh, cannot put. Can everybody help me? Chontawat Medi.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Oh, hi, Art. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for opportunity. This is a good chance for me to learn about Simlab. It's a new technology for me.
Fantastic.
Okay. Ibu Su, it's like Almodo alumni here to see the presentation. All right, Mr. Ulhak, I hand over it to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Neni. The wonderful material. Wonderful. Thank you very much for all the speakers, for informative and insightful presentations. And thank you also for Ibu Neni as a moderator. I do not dare to ask questions because the time is very limited. So because there are so many persons who want to ask questions, and distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, we have some inspiring time together in this event. Those are these agendas we have presented to you this morning as we have finished our sessions. Thank you for the participation and see you in our next national webinar or international webinar.
Can we share our certificate, Pak Ulham?
Don't worry. Yes. Don't worry about the present attendance link, and certificate will be distributed on the chat room after this. And the committee will also present or highlight the next week webinar. I'm Ulhak Zuhdi, the person in charge. Say wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, everybody, next week we're gonna have national webinar on learning media with Mr. York. So see you next week. Thank you, Ibu Su. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
John. Thank you, Ibu Natasha. See you
Thank you
again
all.
next time.
See.
Pleasure is ours.
Bye.
Bye, Frank. Thank you for attending.
Bukan hanya menunggu mimpi karena asa, bukanlah menyerah pada cara. Inilah saatnya tak lagi berpangku tangan. Udesa berkarya untuk negeri Indonesia. Yakin kita pasti akan bisa meraih asa, menggapai cita. Singsingkan lengan, adalah ke depan. Kobarkan semangat dalam dada. Terus berkarya selagi bisa, tak mudah lelah dan putus asa. Bergandeng tangan, satukan upaya, Udesa satu langkah di depan. Satu kata, hidup ini perjuangan. Tapi Tuhan selalu ada untuk kita. Jangan ragu lagi, asa, ilmu, iman, takwa. Demi satu kata, satu Indonesia. Yakin kita pasti akan bisa meraih asa, menggapai cita. Sisihkan lengan, adalah ke depan. Kobarkan semangat dalam dada. Terus berkarya
Indonesia, satu langkah di depan.
Bukan hanya menunggu mimpi kan datang, bukan pula menyerah pada kalah. Inilah saatnya tak lagi berpangku tangan. Unesa berkarya negeri Indonesia. Yakin kita pasti akan bisa meraih asa, menggapai cita. Singkirkan lengan, pandanglah ke depan, kobarkan semangat dalam dada. Terus berkarya selagi bisa, tak mudah lelah dan putus asa. Bergandeng tangan, satukan upaya, Unesa satu langkah di depan. Satu kata, hidup ini perjuangan. Tapi Tuhan selalu ada untuk kita. Jangan ragu lagi, asa, ilmu, iman, takwa. Jadi satu kata, Unesa untuk Indonesia. Yakin kita pasti akan bisa meraih asa, menggapai cita. Sisihkan lengan, pandanglah ke depan, kobarkan semangat dalam dada. Terus berkarya selagi bisa, tak mudah lelah dan putus asa. Bergandeng tangan, satukan upaya, Unesa satu langkah di depan. Yakin kita pasti akan bisa meraih asa, menggapai cita. Sisihkan lengan, pandanglah ke depan, kobarkan semangat dalam dada. Terus berkarya selagi bisa, tak mudah lelah dan putus asa. Bergandeng tangan, satukan upaya, Unesa satu langkah di depan. Jayalah Unesa, satu langkah di depan.
Indonesia, satu langkah di depan.